My wife basically told me that she needed some space. Came out of a bit of a surprise for me because I was at a point where I felt like we were getting closer together and strengthening our bond. That was the impression that I was feeling at the time. So when I questioned a little bit more, I understood that she was starting to have doubts. I started getting anxious, becoming anxious, from an avoidant attachment style. So I grew up mostly wanting my own independence. And usually when I was in a relationship, it was really, I needed my space, to say, I needed my space. I had to somewhat learn by myself. I didn't even know how far, how deep it could go. So, and now being a year in, I realized this was just the icing on the cake.
You tried on your own to do everything possible to bring your marriage back together.
It's extremely hard to have really honest and truthful conversation, because what I quickly realized, and we both quickly realized.
Ollie, thank you so much for being my first guest on this new episode of podcast as we have. I feel like it's so important for us with different attachment styles to share more openly about our struggles with these attachments, what really happens within our bodies. And I think why I really want to do this is, in my practice, a lot of people will come to me and say, I know I'm the only one who's feeling like this. And nothing makes us feel more separate and alone from each other than when we think that we're the only ones suffering. We're the only ones going through this. So I feel like, having you and others share stories, and I will share mine as well, just allows everyone to know that we all struggle. We all go through difficult experiences. And somehow the resilience of us humans, we get through it. We figure it out. What I want you to do for us is share a little bit about yourself and your challenges and what got you interested in learning more about your attachment style, please.
Cool. Well, now, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be the first. Well, a little bit about myself first. Well, here I am. I'm 42 years old, and I've been married for 10 years, a whole decade now. And my wife and I have two kids who are 3 and 7 years old. And so I'm here today. Well, we're here to talk about attachment styles, and you mentioned about struggles, and yes, the last year has been quite a struggle for me. My memory is a little unclear, so we'll kind of go with it. So it all started with around March last year, where my wife basically told me that she needed some space. So it came out of a bit of a surprise for me because I was at a point where I felt like we were getting closer together and strengthening our bond. That was the impression that I was feeling at the time. And at that same time, she tells me she needed some space. And I started to, well, I wasn't worried at first, but it was pretty normal for someone to ask for space. And so I say, well, maybe you can take a weekend off and spend some time with some friends, and if that's what you need, and that's great, that's fine. But she seemed to intend that there seemed to be a deeper meaning to her need for space. It seemed like it was something that she needed a bit more distance from me. That's what it seemed to. So when I questioned a little bit more, I understood that she was starting to have doubts about where we were going as a family, as a couple at first, and also as a family. And I started getting anxious, becoming anxious. So a little bit about my attachment styles here. I am very sure I come from a from an avoidant attachment style. So I grew up mostly wanting my own independence, and usually when I was in a relationship, it was really I needed my space. I needed my space, and but eventually, after I got married, I started to kind of learn how to become a little bit more secure in relationships. And I think it's nobody is taught how to be secure. Nobody, we're not taught at school. We usually don't have the right example in front of us, and I for sure didn't growing up. So I had to somewhat learn by myself, and also with the partner I was. And so I believe I've become a bit more secure now, but that didn't mean that I wasn't anxious when my wife told me that she needed more distance from me. Yeah, I think that's kind of how it all started last year, and there's a lot of things that went on after this, and we can go into the details if that's
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing. Look, this has been a recurring theme with the attachment styles when it comes to a relationship ending or one partner coming up and asking for space. I often hear people say it came out of nowhere. And I've had that experience. It can be quite jarring, almost like where your body's like, oh, this is just a temporary thing. This is not a real threat. And then as time moves on, it's like your body starts to settle into this, oh my gosh, is
yeah.
this the end? What did that feel like for you after you started to come to grips that this might be a little bit bigger than just a weekend away?
I realized the struggle was just starting at the time. I didn't even know how far, how deep it could go. And now, being a year in, I realized this was just the icing on the cake. So for me, I think the what was interesting was I said it was a surprise to me because I was in a different space, completely different space. And I realized that for my wife, she had been mulling over this for probably many years, not a few weeks. So she had years of advance preparation for this, as opposed to me, where it was a sudden realization. And how I process it was being who I am, where I'm also, I come from I'm in software, so I like to build things and solve problems. So I saw this as maybe as a problem that needed resolution. So I started to look around for coaches, for therapists who could help us because there was an obvious problem in the relationship. And I thought maybe we could have someone to help us talk through it because I didn't understand where I was or where she was, and I really thought we needed help. So I looked around online, and especially online because I wanted to find someone that was hopefully the best and who could really help us nail down what the problem was. And we found a coach at the time who agreed to on board with us and looked at us more as a marriage counseling kind of to start with. So we had couples session together, and then we had individual sessions with her. And within 3 months of that, the coach told me, had a one-on-one with me, and at the end she said, if there's no willingness from one party to want this, there's nothing she could do. It was really hard to hear that, and because I was in it to try to find what the solution was, what can we work it out? But and hearing that was very painful, extremely painful, and I didn't give up. I wanted to try to find another solution. And I think that's when I started to read about attachment styles. That was my my first connection with attachment styles, and I found it really, really interesting. I said, that's something I've never heard about. Maybe I can look into it. And when I started browsing online, Instagram, and all about attachment style, I found you, Anna, and I proposed to my wife that we look from this angle instead, and she agreed. She agreed. We both looked through your blogs and your we listened to a bit of your podcast that you had, a few episodes, and then we thought, let's have a look. Let's look into it, and that's when we started the 12 week session with you.
The program. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that you tried. You tried beside the talking to the couples coach and beside talking to me, you tried on your own to do everything possible to bring your marriage back together. Can you share some
Yeah.
of those things that you did?
Well, first of all, it was conversations. I think I tried to have conversations with my wife at the time and really understand her perspective. But you know, when emotions are running wild, it's extremely hard to have really honest and truthful conversation, because what I quickly realized, and we both quickly realized, immediately as soon as we started talking, we both went on the defensive, trying to bring our own expectation or points of views in forward, and without really understanding or really understanding the other party's position and comment. And now I'm saying it, but it's easy to say that, to observe it from now. But
Yeah.
in the moment, it's extremely hard to be detached from our own perspective, and we realized that we couldn't talk. It's impossible. It was like hitting a wall, both of us, and it was frustrating, and that was the hard part. It was so frustrating, and it just like a cycle, it just gets worse and worse.
It happens in every relationships, but more so these relationships where we're building a future. We're kind of really just
Yeah,
projecting our childhood onto, hoping that this
yeah,
person we chose to spend the rest of our life with would not make us feel rejected and abandoned like our parents
yeah,
did. So it gets difficult. And that's why it's like, I think in these communications, we've got to be more in a space of listening than
yeah,
speaking, because when we're talking it's like you're not hearing exactly what you want to hear so you can feel safe and secure, and so it's like
yeah,
you lash out because we're unable to say, hey, I hear what you're saying, but I would really rather if I could hear you say this thing instead, because right now
yeah,
I am so scared of losing you. And I think both attachments, I think both the avoidant attachment and the anxious attachment are, we can get in that space of such fear, overwhelming fear. We can't process our thoughts enough
yeah,
to speak clearly.
yeah,
And I know you and I have talked about this over months, really. Communication via email, not text, email can be so helpful, because there we're in our calm, the other person's not there, we've got time to revisit this email, edit it, and come over
mhm,
as clearly as we possibly can. But yeah, it can be a roller coaster if we're trying to communicate what we feel and what our needs are in front of this person who
yeah.
we feel have the ability to snap the life out of us, right? It's hard.
Yeah, I was gonna. It's funny that you mentioned communication over email, because this is the way that my wife and I met in the first place. So we were communicating via email, and at that time, it was 10 years ago. We we didn't know about attachment styles, far away. But I thought, when I reflect now, I realize that this was a way for us to really get to know each other, and to a point where we were very vulnerable in these emails. When you read them, you can actually see two people who are extremely vulnerable. But then when we met in person, there was like a wall, there was like a block, there was like we it's different. There's a fear. I think you mentioned fear, and that's
Mhm.
true. There's a
Mhm.
fear of getting too close to the person, fear of losing that person, and
Saying
there's
the
all this
wrong
at play.
things.
Saying the wrong things. Yes, exactly. Yes. Whereas email, like you said, we have time to really think about it, edit it, clear it, and then send it. Yeah.
Thinking as we talk about this, it would have been, I think, a lesson we could have taken away from childhood while attachment styles are not taught in home or schools as yet. What we could have learned, and you've got children, maybe it's something you want to practice, have them send emails to each other, allow that space and let them know at the same time, look, yeah, your emotions can carry you away. You could process your emotions on paper. We could sit with that paper and you could read everything to me and we'll discuss it. But yeah, it's like, I like to imagine our childhood, and you show up to a parent and you ask for something and you get shut down, or you feel rejected, or you feel like they don't have the time for
Mm.
you. I'm wondering, if my parents had said, can you write down your thoughts
Mm.
and come back and let's discuss it? Would I have known how to communicate differently or in a better way as I grew into other relationships?
Yeah.
Because when we communicate with our parents and we feel like they're not paying attention or we're being misunderstood, then we could very well grow up feeling like we're going to be misunderstood by everyone. And
Yeah.
now we're going to get into
Yeah.
troubles. And that happens a lot with the avoidant attachment style. They
Yeah.
generally have a hard time speaking because of
Mm-hmm.
that history of saying the wrong things or feeling like they've
Mm-hmm.
said the wrong things and get
Mm-hmm.
punished for it. How has this been for you as a parent?
Yeah, that's been an interesting journey. So I think before all this happened, a year before, I think I was at a point where I felt like I've hit the ceiling as a parent. I couldn't see any more growth, and there were challenges. The relationship between me and my son was challenging. He would say things like that didn't sound true to me, but to him it was things like he didn't feel like that I loved him, and it was hard to hear. And no matter what I said to him, it was he kept this point, and I didn't know why or what was causing it. But after this, the separation happened between my wife and I. I've had to really rethink this. How am I going to parent now that I'm parenting alone? Or we are co-parenting, but not together. And I've had a lot more time to spend with the kids as opposed to before, where I think it was my wife who was spending more time with them. And that has really changed our relationship a lot. And at the same time, as I was learning more about attachment styles, that's something that I was aware of now, and not wanting to kind of influence his style in any way, or try to be careful about this. And but I've realized now that both my son and I, we've both realized that we have a much closer relationship now. It's just amazing. It's mind blowing, and it's like completely gone up where it was before. And we are able to talk about emotions, which we never did before. We're able to talk about emotions. We're able to really look at every situation, whether it's happy or sad, and really analyze it and really think about what's causing it to happen to us. And just the ability to talk about it has, for me, it was a big success. I think I've learned a little bit well, from our conversations that we've had, you and I, and also because I was conscious about this. Now the questions that I was asking were a bit more uh, to the point of engaging the conversation a bit more meaningfully than it was than before. So, for example, I remember we came back from school, and I used to ask him, "Hey, so what happened at school today?" And he would remain silent. He wouldn't say a single word, and it was very frustrating. And I kept asking him, "Tell me, what did you play? Did you play with your friends?" He wouldn't say a single word. And just one day, were coming back from school, and I asked him, so what was the one thing that made you happy today? And he started talking. He started, oh, I had this friend, we talk about Minecraft, and we started, and that made him happy to talk about it. And that triggered me as well. I was like, wow, okay, this can get him going. So now I can ask different questions based on that. So I can ask, what made you sad? Why did it make you sad? And things like that. So that was very interesting.
It's a probing questions, and that's not only for children. I think the one of the issues or one of the trouble we put ourselves in is when we start to think that our children are too young to understand, and we don't communicate with them like we would any other human being. And one of the things that you and I had spoken about is how important it was to let them know what was going on in the marriage, so they're not confused. A lot of times children see parents suddenly decide that they're not going to live together anymore, but they're still getting along, which can be very confusing for a child. And it's like the child, if I could put myself back in a 5-year-old, or you could put yourself in a 5-year-old, and we see our parents suddenly decide they're not going to live together. There weren't any big fights, but they're not living together anymore, and they're still getting along. So I must have done something.
Yeah,
I'm the reason. So to have these conversations and let them know not all of the details of what's going on in the relationship, but to say that, look, sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes they want other things, but it's not a you thing. Mommy and daddy still love you. We're still here for you. And then being interested in their life by asking these questions of, how do you feel? Feeling questions. And it's something that I say to my fairly single clients who are going out dating. If you want to know someone's attachment style, asking these why or feeling questions, because avoidant attached persons generally don't like answering those feeling questions.
Yeah, that's right. And that's definitely one thing that has helped us, my son and I. Until now, he still blames himself for us not living together, the parents. But the fact that we are able to talk about it now, he's slowly understanding. I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation. It's not going to be, oh, next day he won't totally be okay with it. And it's really about for him to feel that it's his fault. And in order for him not to feel this way, we really need to have conversations. And like you said, one of the things that I started to open up with him was also my feelings about the separation. So I talked to him like he was an adult as well, but of course using the words that he could understand, and also shared about how I was sad that this is happening. This is not something that that I had really much control on, and these are certain things that happen, and we also, the fact that we're also Baha'is, and in the Baha'i faith we have this 1 year of patience that before we can really separate or divorce, we have to go through a year where we're living separately, and during that year we're meant to work on ourselves and hopefully rekindle the spark or the flame. And I told him also that we are in this period, and it's actually a period of hope. If you think about it, it's a period of hope, even though it is what it is, and there's a chance that it will remain like that, but there's also a chance that things can rekindle. You never know. So let's play with this now. So he understood. He really understood this. So
and that's a beautiful thing about being in flow and teaching him that, there is this period of flow that we're in life. It's like, this is what we're doing right now. We're doing this separation because of the faith, and we'll see how life turns out. Now, I want to ask you about your faith, your religion. How has this affected anything? Because you came into, if there's a religion, we generally come into these commitments with an expectation. How have you been maneuvering your emotions around this?
That's a complex one. Because my wife and I met because we are Baha'is, and I don't think we would have met otherwise, or who knows. And when two people of the same faith get together, there's an expectation, as you mentioned, that we would abide to certain framework or a certain kind of path that is kind of, we're both on that path, that same path. And this has pretty much guided our way until last year. And this has, there's also an expectation that we would be together forever. Like, that's the expectation. When we get together, we actually say that we will all verily abide by the will of God. And so we'll abide. It's not just our will, but it's also the will of God. And so there is this understanding that we will be together. So when this happened, it has really put things into perspective for me, especially when the shock of the news to me that we are actually separating. This was hard at the time when she left the house and went to live somewhere else. It's made me question a lot of my deep belief that was very ingrained. And but funny enough, the paradox with this is that after I went through this struggle of really reflecting on my beliefs, reflecting on where I am at, and becoming peaceful with the situation, it actually strengthened my faith even more. I realized that it wasn't because of the faith that we are separating. It was what it is. It's two people who maybe are incompatible, or as my wife says, we are incompatible. But it really showed me that there is a lot more to that. Like the power of forgiveness, for example, the power of letting go, detachment, these all come from the faith. So it actually strengthened me also in a way.
Yeah, it's funny how the Baha'i faith and Buddhist teachings are so similar. It's like detaching from the structures. You said that you both, is it you both agreed, or did she say that you're not compatible?
She said, yes.
All right. Oh, do you
I have a different view.
Now, what are your thoughts on compatibility?
Yeah, well, yes. No, this is interesting. I think we can write a whole book on compatibilities. The thing is, I don't think it exists someone where you are 100% compatible with this person. And there are reasons why there are incompatibilities, because this could be a way for you to grow, a way for you to understand, to develop compassion, to develop. So that's why there are incompatibilities. So I don't believe that I am meant to look for someone who is 100% compatible with me. So that doesn't exist. That's the first thing. And when there are incompatibilities, I also believe that incompatibilities can be turned into compatibilities eventually. So as we learn to work with each other through proper communication, effective communication, I think that's very important. We can't avoid communication, whether it's by email or conversation, but that's my learning actually out of this. And we can actually work together. We can make things smoother for the couple, for the relationship, and for the family. I think it's possible. It's just of course it depends on both needs to also see it the same way.
Well, here's where I'm going to ask you to coach me. How do I know what I'm compatible with if I don't know what my values are or what it is I want? And again, that leads us right back to attachment styles, right? If we feel like it's the validation, the short-lived validation, the short-lived attention, the excitement that we need, then how do I know what exactly I'm compatible with, right? Or what am I fighting for? What's the end goal? What's the intention?
No, this is deep. I think self-reflection is a big part of it. I think at one point you had me do a homework where I had to write my values down and really understand why and how it came about. And I remember doing it and really thinking about each of these points that I was listing: honesty, truthfulness. I was listing these things. Why are these important to me? And that helps me really understand who I am. Because if I don't know who I am, I can't also look at somebody and say, this is the person I want in my life, if I don't know who I am. And I think this is where self-reflection is very important, because who we are also changes with time. We don't remain the same person. So we have to constantly go back. So who I was 10 years ago is not the same person who I am now. So, and when you're in a relationship with someone, that's even more, it doubles the reflection even more. And we have to also kind of ask questions together. It's not so much individual, but together. Who are we as a couple? And I know in my relationship with my wife, we've never done this. Asking together, who are we as a couple? It was always individually. We would do this individually, and maybe that's how we kind of diverge instead of converge. So I mean, all these are suppositions, but I think there's some truth to it. Yeah.
Well, I think for our viewers and listeners, I want to recap the whole value thing. This is something I kind of figured on my own, because of course I was in search of myself and still searching for who I'm becoming. So the value thing came up when I realized that our values, our core values, are linked to the things that either gave us peace in our past or the things that caused us pain in the past. So for example, honesty, which is something you brought about, truthfulness, that's also incredibly important to me. Why? Because when I was lied to, I was devastated. When I lied to other people, I saw the pain that it caused them, which created guilt within me and regret. So now it's like, okay, it's not worth it. I'm not going to lie. Or time, for example. Recently, I've had a lot of people talk about those with more of the avoidant attachment style disrespecting their time. Why does that happen? And why does it hurt so much? It's not that you've missed a time or you're 2 hours late. It's that you're telling me you don't value me. You're telling me that you don't respect me. It's an underlying reason. And so for those people who are severely affected by those or the people they feel disrespect their time, they show up on time. They're punctual, and they're reliable. So it's always another example I like to give. Religion, for example. When I was growing up, I went to church a lot, and it was the most peaceful place. And spirituality is incredibly important for me now, because it's such a peaceful space to be in, a liberating space to be in. And so I value that so much so that I'm careful with what I eat, what time I go to bed, how many hours of sleep I have, the people around me and the energies that they bring to my life, because it's such an incredibly important value. And only when we know where the root of our values, then we could start creating these boundaries where we say, no, 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 you don't bring this kind of language into my peaceful space. No, 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 you don't get to disrespect my time, because it can be spent with the other things that I value. So yeah, values are really important. And like you said, we don't talk about these things at the beginning of relationships. It's always the spark.
That's a good learning.
All right. What about, I mean, take me back to when you met your wife, the very beginning stages of dating. What is it you wish you had learned then? What questions you wish you had asked or listened out for?
Yeah, my wife and I had a very unconventional way of kind of getting to know each other, because we met online through Facebook. At the time, it was Facebook, through a common friend that we had, and my wife is really good at writing. So she writes really well, and she wrote this little piece about this friend who we had in common, and which showed up on my wall. And I was very curious about who wrote this, because I knew the person very well, and I was very impressed by the words that she used in describing this person. So I kind of dug around and messaged this person, who is my wife, was my wife, and since then we kept in touch. We started exchanging messages and exchanging short paragraphs, which became longer and longer over the weeks, and daily, almost daily, we were exchanging messages, and through these messages, through these emails, long emails, we were getting to know each other. So we were talking about our values, we were talking about our families, our stories that was happening to us at the time, and really deep reflections that we were having at the time, that we're sharing about our struggles, about our what our ambitions and what aspirations that we had. It was a really beautiful thing. I think one of the things my wife says that we have no chemistry, and I was I tend to disagree, because there's so many ways of looking at chemistry, and for me that was a form of chemistry. The way that we had the energy to really write to each other almost daily, nonstop, like exchanging. And then after that, we upgraded to Zoom. No, there was a Zoom, Skype at the time. It was Skype. So we had video chats, and we started to talk to each other, and there was, if you ask me, there was an attraction, a physical attraction, because it wasn't to a point where I don't this person doesn't really fit, so I'm gonna maybe slow down the pace that we are interacting, and to the point where hopefully we'll end. But this didn't happen. We kept talking every single day, every week, and it came to a point after 11 well, about 10 months or so of being at a distance. We were in two different countries. That's why I had to mention this. We're in two different countries. And we decided that I decided that I'll come visit her. So I'll go visit her. So I went to visit her in person. She came to pick me up from the airport. And we spent a whole week together, really enjoying our physical presence. Then it was more this that we had not, so we did activities together, and that's how we started. When I look about this, I think there's some kind of purity and beauty in this kind of getting to know the character of the other person, instead of having this immediate spark that suddenly blows everything out of the picture, and then it's just that person. And so that's how I feel. I don't know if she will have the same story, but at least for me, this was my experience of our getting to know each other. And so you asked me what would I've had done differently, and that's where I think if I'd known about attachment style, I maybe would have, my conversations with her would have been a little different. And I think what we used to do back in the days was to talk about really things we had control on, things we could see, things we could touch, These were our conversation in person. I'm not talking about the email conversation, but our in-person conversation was really about things that were concrete. But I think what I kind of wish we had done was to talk about more deeper emotional, what do you say, have these kind of conversations, deep and meaningful conversations that explores in depth what the other person is feeling, and also our past. I think we kind of glance over our past, our childhood, our teenage years. I think even then we talk about the facts that happen. We talk about, I went to school, I went to that, but we don't talk about how we felt growing up, or what kind of deep challenge that we actually had to face back then. So these are the things that I would have maybe tried to bring up in our conversations. Yeah.
A lot of us made that mistake and continue to make the mistake where you meet someone.
It's quite easy to make.
You're talking about the shallow stuff, the mundane stuff, like, oh, what kind of music do you like? What kind of movies do you like?
That's right.
What kind of music did you grow up with? Do you like to travel? What do you like to drink? What foods do you like to eat? What school did you go to? But not, how did you get to school? Oh, I took the bus. How did that make you feel getting on the bus? Oh, it was so liberating. It was such an independent feeling. Did you have friends at school? Not really. Who did you eat with? Who did you hang out with? Why didn't you have friends? How did that make you feel to walk home alone, or whatever it is? And in asking these questions, you'd be surprised at how much of the attachment style you learn. Because, avoidant attached tend to have a lot of friends in school, but not friends that are these deep, meaningful conversations they'll have. Whereas an anxious attached may have 1, 2, or 3 really close friends, and they talk about everything. It's a person they can call, and that person shows up. And then the other thing is you learn about who the person is. And what I find, I don't know if there's a science out there just yet on it. There's still research being done, I'm doing. But what I found so far is that the anxious attached will not only be intimately attracted to an avoidant attached, if that's been the case, all of their friends will also be of that attachment style. So far in all the cases I've seen, that's been the thing, because we're attracted to that part of them, the part of the person that either consciously or unconsciously we need their approval. And it's just the craziest thing that a lot of it is unconscious. I think, talking about attachment style, learning about it, it brings about our awareness. We're able to spot things quicker and then go through the mental process of it. But if we don't know what we're talking about, people keep getting into these relationships over and over. I was one of them. You get into these relationships over and over, and you're like, why do I keep attracting these people? And then, unfortunately, we think everyone's like this, which is not true.
We start making blanket comments about all women are like this, or
all women, all men, and it's really not. You have a lot of women and men avoidant and anxious attached, and then they're more secure attached, which, for the anxious and avoidant, they're like, where are they? Where are these people? But we're only going to be able to attract them when we get to that secure space where we're able to know our values, set the boundaries. And when we're that strong in ourselves, the anxious and the avoidant will start to fall away, because we'll know that they're not people who are ready to accept and respect us for who we are. What's been your biggest takeaway from learning about attachment styles, and how would you have approached your relationship differently? I know you said you're talking more in depth about feelings and stuff. Give me an example of that, please.
I think, when we're not aware of it, we have a fear of rocking the boat too much. It's a fear. So we try to only look at the good things and grab onto the good things and stay there. I don't want to rock the boat, so I'm not going to ask these questions that I know will actually trigger more things. And I think that's one thing I will not do again, or I will do. So I actually want to. It's okay to rock the boat, and that will give you a very good impression of where can you go with that kind of boat,
Yes, you rock the boat, it'll sink or not.
That's right. Yes, I think it's important. So that's probably one of the things that I think I would have done. And the thing about rocking the boat is also about being truthful. When we are really truthful and honest about ourselves, I think we're not trying to show only the good side of us. We feel free to be open and show the good side and also the not so good side, and talk about it and and be open about that, and not fearing how the person is going to receive that. Because a lot of times I remember I didn't want to talk about certain things because I thought that she would judge me, or vice versa. She would judge me on that part. So I'm not going to talk about this. But that's not being truthful. That's actually being the opposite.
Yeah.
So,
I often share the story. My son, years ago, I told him his sister was dating someone, and she seemed very happy. And my son, he was probably 8 years old. And he said, did they have their first fight as yet? And I said, I don't think so. And he said, well, we'll know how the relationship goes depending on how they handle the first fight. And I was like, oh yeah. And that's something that the avoidant attached knows very well. Like they will provoke, they will test to see how the person in their life will react. And if that person reacts in a way that makes them feel unsafe or insecure, they tend to step back. And then they're like, oh, I've got to reassess this. When they start reassessing it, generally their partner starts to become more anxious, starts to reach out and grab them in. And then the avoidant goes into, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my independence. I'm going to lose my autonomy here. So it's like, but the awareness is, I find, I mean, I'm from an anxious attachment to that, and just moving more and more into secure. And it's not easy. I think that's one of the things that we really have to accept, that, you know, we've been a certain way for so long. We are so programmed. We've got all of these labels like husband and father and, you know, member of a community, member of an organization. And you've got these labels that tells us, oh, we should be this way and we should be that way. And then we're not ourselves, and we show up to our dates not being ourselves. What advice would you give to someone who is going through something similar to what you have gone through in the beginning of this year, 2024, the year ago?
Yeah.
And what would you say to them that you've learned over the course of the year, as well as where you are now since all of this happened? Is that clear enough?
Yeah.
I should have gone with 3 questions instead of 1 in 3. Yeah.
No, I think the challenge for me here is because I'm still learning. You know, I'm still in the process. And one of the main things, and a friend of mine told me this, I think you also told me this, and it's to trust the process. I think there is a tendency for, as we go through it, to fight it, to either want to not go with the flow, to basically try to rebel against it. But at the same time, the more we do this, the more it gets worse. So we really have to trust the process and be, in a way, detached. And what eventually, I do believe that the right thing will end up happening, whatever is right for us. So, which is hard because we have our own desires, our own wishes, and then there's the process that we go through. So balancing these two has been hard for me. I think really trying to be detached, learning to be detached, and rebuilding from that. Really, I think one of our work that you and I did was really focusing on my strength and the things that I wanted to do. I think that really helped me because I've started to do a lot of other things. I started to take on dancing, which I've never done before. I started to now go to the gym, and, you know, the things that I've never really
I want to know the
doing
list. I think
so
our
busy.
listeners and viewers want to know the list. What are the new things that you're doing?
I picked up portrait drawing. It's still going on. I'm not any expert in any of this, but still, it has helped me in a way that I believe it helped me focus on a different thing, because the thoughts can be we can be so engrossed in it. Until now, I can be thinking about it every single day, every single minute. But when you start to do things for yourself, whether you're dancing, whether you're going to the gym, whether you're doing drawing, it helps you detach from this and be at peace. I think that's very important, and it's helpful for our mental health. It has helped me for sure, and I think it's just a good thing to do, even if you're in a relationship that's going well. I think these are things that we need to do for ourselves, and so yeah, I'll keep doing these things.
I think it's more of a, we could learn how to fulfill our own needs for happiness and validation and peace, and not depend on our partner or the person we choose to be with to make us happy. If you're going dancing, then that's a feeling of freedom and joy, and you're in your own space, and you are happy. You're not dependent on another person. You're doing this for yourself. Or like the sketching. And I will encourage all of my clients to go back to childhood. Try to get back to that child that's curious and playful and, you know, living in that life of flow. Children don't sit around wondering who they're going to get married to or who they're going to spend the rest of their lives with. And they want it all. They want to dance and they want to sketch. And why not? Why not? right?
Yeah.
So I'm really happy for you. I'm glad that you're in this space. Glad we're 1 year away from it all. And I wish
Yeah.
you all the best on your healing journey. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I heal you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish you all the best. And I know, I believe the same thing you do. Everything happens as it should, when it should, and it happens for
Yeah.
the best of reason. So thank
Yeah.
you so much,
I mean,
Ollie.
I could talk more and more on this. I think at the end of this, I think I'll have to write it all down. I think I've been writing also. That's a good thing. Writing your thoughts down. That's also very helpful. So I think that's something we need to encourage. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is not a plug for this app. I'm not paid by them or anything of the sort. There is an app that I've been using, and I find it incredibly helpful. I've recommended it to everyone I know. It's called Rosebud Journal. I don't know if you and I spoke about it before,
No,
but it's a
no.
journal that prompts you to go deeper. So you could write about your feelings and then you click on go deeper. And then when you're done, you said, I'm done. And it'll summarize everything you say and it'll, keep you all hyped up to get your goals achieved.
Oh,
Or
nice.
yeah, it's a
Should try
really
it
good
out.
journal app. So yes, thank you so much, Ollie. I really
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you. It's always amazing having a chat.